Dear all, MeDirect thanks you for joining this webinar, the 11th in our MeDirect Talk series, and the 6th and final one for this year. During these sessions, we feature several financial experts and asset managers sharing their views on market and investment opportunities. MeDirect has always been on the forefront of providing you with the latest on the investment world, and we aim to continue doing so through our regular updates on our website and social media. Our team of experienced wealth advisors are also always available to assist you. This time round, we are addressing the very topical subject of thematic and sectoral investing. I am sure we have all heard these words in the recent months since they are almost becoming buzzwords. Joining us today is AJ Ziegler, Vice President and leading Product Strategist within the Active Equities Group at BlackRock, representing global, sector, and thematic equity strategies. Prior to this role, Mr. Ziegler was a product strategist for the fundamental active equity division of BlackRock's Alpha Strategies Group, based in the United States, providing a link between the US-based investment teams and client managers. AJ will be discussing sectoral and thematic investing, with a special focus on healthcare and technology. BlackRock is an American multinational investment management corporation based in New York. Founded in 1988 initially as a risk management and fixed income institution asset manager, BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager. Matthew has also joined us today and is a relationship manager within the BlackRock team, and he will be giving a brief introduction before AJ takes the presentation forward. Matthew, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, and welcome. Good evening to all of our clients in Malta and with MeDirect. Today we have some of the most pressing and interesting conversation topics for the coming months, if not years. And this is why we'd like to introduce you to these themes, what are called mega trends that we're witnessing in the markets, but also around our lives, if you will, which are crucial, not just from a financial point of view, but also in the development of humanity. So bearing these in mind, we thought today we'd like to give you an overview of two of the main drivers in today's markets, technology and healthcare. We've done this and we'll be doing this most importantly with AJ Ziegler, who is indeed the product strategist for these themes. So at this point, I think it's crucial to get an understanding of what are megatrends and how, especially technology and healthcare, are crucial for our investments. Over to you, AJ, and thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Matt, and thanks, Ingrid, for making the time for me to speak today. And of course, thank you, everyone who's watching today. And, I think we have a very excited topic. When we think about what are the forces that are going to drive financial markets, society, and really every aspect of our daily lives, we refer back to these megatrends. And these megatrends that transform society and the economy, they're very much linked to two sectors and thematics that we're going to focus on today. That's technology and healthcare. So over the next several minutes, I'll talk about what themes we see within these areas that excite us for the coming years, how we at BlackRock are positioned to capture and benefit from these trends, and a little bit about our outlook going forward and how we see them evolving. So to kickstart, just to give an overview, what are these megatrends? I'd like to highlight these three right in the middle. Now, starting out with technological breakthrough, technology is transforming all types of sectors and industries, from health to consumer to financials, and it keeps on disrupting multiple areas that 5-10 years ago we would have thought maybe wouldn't be able to be disrupted by tech. Another mega trend is demographics and social change. Think about how we're living longer and what that means for every aspect of our life. Well, if we're living longer, probably going to have to spend a lot more on healthcare. In fact, people over the age of 65 spend about 3 times more on healthcare compared to their entirety of their life beforehand. So for healthcare companies, this idea of aging demographics is really significant for their bottom line. The third one I would mention is emerging global wealth. When we think about the next age of where wealth is going to be derived from, emerging markets is front and center, not just in Asia, but also Latin America. And when we think about these broader themes of demographics and technological breakthrough, none of them are isolated to a singular country or region. These are truly global. And we believe that the 2 sectors that can likely benefit from these broader megatrends are tech and healthcare. So maybe I'll dive in, starting out with technology. And before diving in to the future, let's talk a little bit about, the case for technology today. One of the key points to note is that technology has driven market returns for over the past 20 years. So this idea of tech driving markets is really nothing new. When we think about today, technology keeps expanding because it's disrupting other industries. We're seeing more companies coming to market, and this disruption is fueling future growth. And when we think about the future, we believe this trend will only gather strength. Think about really any aspect of your daily life from a consumer standpoint, and technology is at the forefront, from the way we communicate, from the way we pay, from the way we interact. Technology is front and center, and that continues to drive growth of this sector over time. So much so if you look at this next slide, just thinking about the returns and the impact, technology has driven over 1/3 of the market returns over the past 20 years. That's a gigantic portion. So what does that mean for investors? Well, one of the things that's important to realize is technology today is very different than technology 20 years ago. 20 years ago, technology was a smaller part of the market, only around 6%. A bit more thought of a luxury, an option, something that's really dedicated just for a smaller subsect of the population or only specific industries. Today, that's completely changed. Try going about a full working day without utilizing technology as a part of your job. That could be a job that, you may not have much longer because technology is a part of really every aspect of our life. And as a result, technology now represents about 1/3 of the market share of global equities. So as investors, you have to really think about, looking at this part of the market to making sure you're positioned to capture these growing trends. Also, one thing about technology that's very important is that this is a segment of the market that's defined by change and disruption. If you think about the leaders of tech over each decade, there's a significant turnover in the leadership of tech. So if you think about the transition from 1990 to 2000, there was about 60% turnover in the leadership of tech. And the same thing happened in 2010. And the same thing happened in 2020. And what's the point of this slide? Well, it shows that technology is always changing and evolving, and the leadership of tech is often very different than prior generations. So if you're looking to find the future winners of tomorrow, they're unlikely to be the same winners of today. And also on this slide, just think about the types of companies that are leaders in tech. You look at from the 2000s, you have a lot of hardware companies, a lot of the actual PCs. In 2010, it was more about the internet. You start to see a little bit of fintech in there as well. And in 2020, it evolves a lot of social media and also new areas. You see Tesla on this slide, one that 10 years ago really wasn't even talked about as much, the transition to electric and autonomous vehicles. So what's to say that in 2030, the leadership of tech could look completely different? And whenever there's that change, disruption, that leads to exciting opportunities for active managers to find out what's coming next. And that's what we focus on in tech, what's coming up in the future. Let's take a step back as well. When we think about this disruption and change of leadership, this also gets passed down to the bottom line. And what do I mean by bottom line? Well, it goes right to the company's earnings. I mentioned at the beginning how tech today is so different than tech 20 years ago. You know, tech 20 years ago in the tech bubble, a lot of companies, you know, weren't very profitable, had very segmented, you know, business models that really didn't, you know, have a longer term view. And those businesses didn't do very well. But today, tech companies are delivering strong earnings. In fact, what you can see on this slide is tech has the highest earnings growth among all other sectors. And what's fueling that growth is that continued disruption within tech and even outside of tech. And that gives such great support for the longer term growth story of tech. Linking it back to the megatrends, technological breakthrough, how tech is really permeating in multiple different avenues of our daily life. This is what leads to much stronger earnings from the tech sector. And it's across multiple different avenues. Just to give, you know, an example, thinking about the ways that tech has reshaped the global economy. Now, think about electric vehicles. Now, it's projected to account for over half of the passenger car sales in the next 20 years. That is a significant dynamic change than what we've seen over the past 20. How about 5G, the increase of connectivity? That's going to impact multiple different industries with the speed of connection. And this is also going to add a tremendous amount of value to overall global GDP. I mean, think of AI. Global spending on AI is forecasted to double over the next couple of years. AI, or artificial intelligence, this looks at the way that we can utilize big data and apply it to multiple different industries that were previously done by humans. And this is how tech is attacking and disrupting multiple different areas. And you can see at the bottom from e-commerce and cloud computing and also global as a service. You know, think to yourself, when's the last time you bought a physical tech good? You know, I don't think anyone listening to this has bought a CD or DVD. It's all about, you know, this service revenue or subscription service. This is something that is significantly different over the past 10 years. And if you want to be at the forefront of change and disruption, I believe tech is the right way to go. We've outlined many more themes as well, you know, from AI and cloud computing, which are also mentioned, from fintech and how we pay. And also one I'd mention on the bottom, the thing about tech beyond tech, tech disrupting areas like digital education or healthcare, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And also this idea of green technology. And one of the biggest themes we see is this transition to sustainability. And we believe that technology, that's really going to be part of the enabler of this transition to sustainability. So when you think about the future themes, not just for next year, but for years to come, this idea of green tech, this shift to sustainability, is one that we very much keep in mind. So with tech, maybe I'll just wrap up on, you know, those are the broad themes and what gets us excited about tech, but, you know, what's our approach? And, you know, we offer a bit of balanced exposure, some of the current winners today, as well as tomorrow's winners that are typically more smaller, mid-cap, and higher growth. And we also have a dedicated team based in San Francisco to try to identify these opportunities. Now, San Francisco, really near the heart of Silicon Valley, where we're seeing a lot of this emerging tech disruption. And what you see on the top right, part of the process is also meeting with the companies directly, you know, conducting over 1,000 company meetings per year and understanding the bottom-up fundamentals of our investments. And also we take a diversified approach to this segment. You know, think about how broad technology has spanned all the different themes that we showed on the previous slides. To capture these themes, we believe it's important to look beyond just the mega caps, the FANGs, if you will. These are the largest companies within the tech segment. To look beyond just those to find some of these smaller mid-cap names that may be lesser known, but may also deliver much stronger growth. So when thinking about broad megatrends over the next several years and technological breakthrough, our strategy is to identify the growing trends that are going to change the dynamics of the sector over the coming years and invest in those names with a very diversified approach across multiple different themes. Now, maybe it's worth shifting gears a little bit to another sector that's also very much aligned to these megatrends, and that's within healthcare. Within healthcare, this is a sector or thematic that offers a bit of a different dynamic. In technology, it's all about growth. It's about growth, change, and disruption. For healthcare, it's a little bit different. It's about resilience, about consistency, and it's about really benefiting from this idea of aging demographics and greater healthcare spend. Well, why is it so important today? Well, if you think about providing that element of resilience, historically speaking, healthcare has typically demonstrated greater downside protection relative to global equity markets. So if you look at these drawdowns over the past couple of years with the MSCI World's developed market equities, whenever that's had a significant decline, healthcare has typically been a bit more resilient. And why is that? Well, healthcare is a sector that's able to deliver very consistent earnings over time. If you look over the past 20, 25 years, and we showed a couple different sectors on this slide from an earnings perspective. Many other sectors are very reliant on either macro factors, how global growth is going, things like interest rates or energy prices. But let me pose a hypothetical question. When you think about healthcare, an individual's health, what macro factor would really give an influence where you would stop spending on your own personal health? Well, very unlikely. Maybe you won't buy that brand new big screen TV, but in terms of personal health care, that's going to be very important. And this resilience, this reliance of people spending on their own health care has led to companies having more consistent earnings regardless of what the market is doing. Markets up, people still spending on healthcare. Markets down, people still need that healthcare spend. It delivers much more consistency and resilience to other sectors, and I think that's very appealing for those who may want to look towards a thematic that doesn't have as much volatility or correlation with changing macro factors. And why is that? Well, we mentioned it a little bit before in the beginning. It's this long-term structural tailwind that offers demand growth, and that's really seen in aging population. Now think back in 1985, less than 15% of the population is 65 or older. Over the next 10 years, it's going to turn into about 1 in 5 people over the age of 65. Now, as I mentioned, why is this so important? Well, people spend much more on healthcare when they're over the age of 65, about 3 times as much. So as this segment of the population grows at an increasing rate, as people keep on living longer, this really sets a fuel for growth for healthcare companies. And another area of growth from a structural demand, we mentioned that idea of emerging market, that emerging global wealth. When you think of some developed market companies like my home country of the United States, well, they spend a significant amount on healthcare as a percentage of GDP, almost 19%. In emerging markets like India and China, that figures closer between 3 and 6%. It's a very different dynamic. But we believe as these economies grow and mature, that healthcare spending will increase as well. And that sets another tailwind for the healthcare sector in addition to aging population. So that's a bit on demographic megatrend, the emerging global wealth megatrend. But what about technological breakthrough? Does it also impact healthcare? And that answer is overwhelmingly yes, absolutely. When we think of innovation in the healthcare sector, it's significantly increased. And I think, when you think about the past couple of years in healthcare, to be honest, it's hard to think of anything but COVID. COVID's obviously had a significant impact on all of our lives. Part of the reason why we're not doing this presentation in person and why, you can see my home office backdrop. But one thing it's taught us is the speed of innovation in healthcare has increased substantially. And it's not just within vaccines, it's all over in different areas of healthcare. You look at these explosion of clinical trials worldwide. You think about the rise of robotic-assisted surgery over the past decade. It's been tremendous. And also a lot of these technologies, because they're becoming much more advanced, they're also becoming a bit cheaper, which is helpful from an economic standpoint. And this is really reshaping healthcare over the coming decades. Thinking beyond just COVID and vaccines, we see many different themes and trends for the coming decade that are aligned with healthcare. Whether it's next-gen diagnostics, better genome analysis, robotic-assisted surgery, which I previously mentioned. Think about how much more advanced this is, a system where you can pre-operation map out exactly the correct optimal incision for a knee or hip replacement surgery and have it conducted with the computerized program of a robotic-assisted surgery device. That's led to less risk of error because it's all pre-programmed to that person's specific anatomy. And it's also led to faster recovery time for patients as well. Now, thinking about biosensors and trackers, medical AI applications, back to the tracker standpoint, thinking about, devices that can better analyze glucose levels without having to take a finger prick. Instead of taking a blood sample, having a device that you could just simply hold up to your arm and take a reading that way. The main point is that innovation in healthcare is everywhere. It's beyond just, COVID and vaccines and testing. But these are the types of areas that's really going to reshape the healthcare sector over the coming decades. And maybe just to give one example, when you think about, post-COVID world, what's the theme maybe we're really looking forward to? And one I would like to highlight just as an example, thinking about the increase of elective procedures. Now, due to COVID, a lot of hospitals had to make capacity for COVID patients, and that's understandable, of course. But as a result, a lot of these elective procedures had to be postponed and delayed. Now, elective procedures, this means a surgery that's not immediately life-threatening. Think knee, joint, hip replacement, something that you can push back. About 28 million of these procedures are canceled or delayed globally. But you think about post-pandemic as hospitals get more capacity. If you needed a knee replacement 6 months ago, a year ago, you probably still need one today. And we look at companies, medical device companies, that have exposure to these elective procedures because although they were negatively impacted in the early waves of COVID, we believe these will rebound. And that could lead to some attractive investment opportunities in this space as these procedures come back in a more normal environment. So how do we aim to capitalize or benefit from these trends and dynamics? Well, similar looking slide to the tech one, we aim to give exposure to multiple different global growth themes within healthcare that's aligned by industry experts. And what we mean by industry experts, and we have a dedicated team based in Boston covering healthcare. It consists of 4 PhDs, 3 MBAs, and also an MD in internal medicine, all on the team. And a big part of their process on the top right is conducting regular meetings with companies or healthcare professionals to really understand the science behind the products. Why is this so important? Well, healthcare is very nuanced and complicated. You think of a clinical trial data result of a drug with some name that's overly complicated and difficult to pronounce, a bunch of facts and figures that are written in that very scientific language. Having a team that already understands that language, the science behind the product, not only can it lead to better analysis of the actual science behind the products, but it also can allow for more insightful conversations when we meet with these healthcare professionals or company management. And also we take a very diversified approach on the bottom left. Healthcare innovation disruption, it's not isolated to just one segment, one region, one country. It's across biotech, pharmaceuticals, medical device and supplies, providers and services. But we invest across a broad range of companies, taking a more risk-aware approach to give a lot of diversified exposure and trying to keep that resilience and consistency of returns, which people turn to healthcare for. We're also flexible on the bottom right. I mentioned how this idea of elective procedures coming back and also thinking about the different dynamics of healthcare in different countries, having that ability to shift exposure as markets change, we believe that, in addition to stock specifics, can lead to strong alpha generation. So with that said, I hope that was a helpful overview of two sectors, technology and healthcare, both very different, but also at the same time, both very much aligned with the megatrends that we see impacting all areas of the market over the coming years. So to wrap up, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. Keeping in mind that these megatrends, they're far less connected to anything short term, whether it's macro, whether it's COVID, or anything else. We believe these trends are going to persist over the long term. And when we think about long-term investing, I think that technology and healthcare are very unique thematics and sectors as a way of getting exposure to these broader megatrends. So with that, let me pause there. I want to wish everyone a happy new year in 2022. Thank you very much for the time. And to conclude, let me pass it back over to Ingrid. Thank you very much.
AJ, Matthew, the whole team at BlackRock who helped us making this a success and setting it up. Thank you for your time today. And AJ, thank you for the information provided. It was really, really interesting. A big thank you also goes to all of you who actually joined us today. Our team of advisors are available if you have any further questions. We would also like to take this opportunity to wish you all a happy Christmas and a prosperous and healthy New Year. Thank you once again and have a nice evening.